All right, everybody. If it is Tuesday, that means it's time for comic book school because Tuesdays are meant for comic books. Well, that is not even the right way to say it. One day I'll get it right. Anyway, it is a very special episode. It is not June. It's September 27th. I can't even believe it. Like, we are literally in the fall, and we are weeks away from the New York Comicon, which we will be talking about a little bit tonight. But we have two special guests and no co-hosts. So we gave Mike Fasolo the night off. I'm sure he's out there shopping for robes or whatever it is that Mike does. But my name is Buddy Scalera. I am the founder of Comic Book School, and I'm here for you, right? We're going to be talking about things that interest you. It's about the craft and business of making comics. And if you are an established creator who wants to level up, if you are somebody brand new trying to get your first foothold in the industry, or just trying to get better at the craft and the business of making comics, you have come to the right place. This is the live show, but pretty soon you'll be seeing us really live at New York Comicon, and I'll be talking about that in a minute. But first, I want to introduce you to one of the longtime editors of Comic Book School, because he is making things. Ari A.A. Rubin, welcome to the show.
How you doing, buddy? Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming, and congratulations on staying incredibly productive throughout the entire pandemic. You were editing both of the anthologies. You contributed to the anthologies. You now have something else out that's brand new, and my mind is blown. It is actually with somebody that you met at a Creator Connection at New York Comicon, hosted by Comic Book School. Is that right?
That is entirely true. My new book, Into That Darkness Peering.
Wait, too fast. Let's give this thing a good long look. A.A. Rubin with
Marika Brasianu. So she, I met her at a Creator Connection. Had to be 5 or 6 years ago at New York Comicon, and then we, as Buddy said, networking event. She's an artist. I'm a writer. We exchanged.
She's also a colorist, isn't she?
She does colors when people do color comics. This is a black and white book, actually.
But what I'm saying is she is multi-talented. Look at this. Look at some of this interior art that is complemented. Now, is this one poem?
This is one standalone flash fiction piece that we did. So it's the story, and she did the illustration to accompany the story. And there are 32 similar stories, either flash fiction or poetry, in the book, each one fully illustrated by Marika in that style. They are all Gothic horror. You may recognize Into That Darkness Peering from Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven. And thanks, Vince. And and Dee, who was also editor at Comic Book School, did the book layout for it, all the book design and file submissions. Thanks, guys, for the book as well.
And I would tell people, go out and run out and buy this. They don't even have to run. They just have to put their finger on the mouse.
Yep.
Where do they get it, Ari?
You can get it at Amazon.com. They have the paperback up there, as well as the Kindle ebook. If you're on Kindle Unlimited, you can add it for free if you're on that service. Otherwise, you have to buy it either in paperback or ebook. But
Wait, you get it free on Kindle Unlimited?
Kindle Unlimited. If you sign up for Kindle Unlimited, which is a service that Amazon has for its ebooks, you sign up and you pay them a subscription fee like you would pay to any other subscription service, and you get an unlimited amount of Kindle books that are part of the program on Amazon.
So I am to understand that the multi-talented editor and co-editor, I should say, because you were one of the editors, of the multi-award-winning Creator Connection, Page One, Panel One, comic book anthology. You also wrote comic books. She makes comic books. You guys joined forces and made flash fiction with comic art and your writing.
That is correct.
This is all kinds of win, Ari. It's just you won the night.
And the great thing is that actually I worked with Marika before. My very first ever published comic, which was in the Constellate Literary Journal, was a short 4-pager that also was written by me and illustrated by Marika, and we stayed in touch over the years.
Thanks to me, I'm right.
Thanks to Buddy Scalera and Comic Book School. And 1 minute, Gary, we got a special guest.
Wasn't that
The
kid
second.
like
Yeah, I know he was
really
like a
little the
baby at
last
the
time we
beginning of the
saw
story.
him? Yeah,
Yep.
he was
Okay, come on, break him off.
he was pretty small the last time we
Yeah.
saw him. The beginning of COVID.
He was very small. Now he's huge. Yeah. So Marika and I met at the Comic Book School Creator Convention, Creator Connection, and we've stayed in touch. We've worked together a number of times. We actually started this project last October during Inktober, where we did something where I would give her a poem or a flash fiction every day, and she would do the inking for it. And we decided to collect them and a few more into the book. That's
all right. So this is
now.
where they can get the book. I'm going to be kicking you off in a minute because we have another guest that's coming.
Yeah.
So they can follow. They can find this on Amazon. Your the name right there. Oh, look at this. The Wonder Twin powers activate.
There you go.
And I don't know who Gary is. Who's Gary? Is
Oh,
Gary?
Gary is my son. Yeah, Gary is my
Gary's
son
your
who
son.
made the little appointment. Yeah.
Ruth's already on to the next Ruben.
She got it.
They can find you at Twitter at The Surreal Ari.
Yep. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, also Surreal Ari. Everything's the Surreal Ari.
And we will be, we'll see you, Ari, at New York Comicon.
Yes, we will.
Will you be willing to sign people's Kindles?
Oh yes, of course. And
right on the glass.
Right on the book and the paperback as well. They should get. It's really a book that if they can get it into paperback, it's nice to be able to see the art in the larger format as well.
You'll be carrying some of those with you at New York Comicon, right?
Yes, assuming they get here on time, I will.
Sounds good. Ari, thank you so much. Where will you be
Thanks,
next?
buddy.
You're going to be on another show again right after this
I'm
one,
going
right?
to be on Nerds of the Round at 9:00 with Sebastian, who's another person who I met at Creator Connection through Comic Book School's Creator Connection. His show comes on right after this one at 9:00.
Sounds good. I will tune in and watch you there. Thanks for joining us, Ari.
Right. Thanks, buddy. Thanks for having me.
All right. So, hey, listen, I think it's great. Ari is proof that if you keep pushing and you keep trying, you will get work done. If you recall, Ari got his first published work from Ahoy Comics, published and paid, I should note, for his prose. So it's possible to level up, and Ari is following what he has learned here on the show. And we're about to learn something really important, and that is how to protect yourself. My next guest, and I'm going to pull up the graphic one more time for those of you who are just joining. My next guest is actually able to give you legal advice. I am not. I can give you a little bit of advice, but this person runs the Comic Publishing Institute, is an actual honest-to-God lawyer. Please welcome Gamal Hennessy.
Hello, sir. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. I have been attending your classes. It is really good stuff. We'll touch on that in a minute. But I also subscribe to your newsletter. It's one of the first things that I open when I see it in my inbox. And you disrupted my newsletter recently when you told me not to tolerate abusive creator content. Hold on. When you told me not to succumb to abusive creator contracts. Gamal, first, tell us who you are, your credentials, and then we'll get right into the story.
Okay. Well, my name is Gamal Hennessy. I am an attorney, author, and business consultant who specializes in the comic book industry. I started working in comics around 1998, 1999. Wow. When I was the general counsel for an anime and manga company called Central Park Media. I was there for about 4 years, and then Marvel decided that they wanted to break into the Japanese market, which is very hard to do as a foreign publisher. It's not when Marvel, even back then in the mid-90s, Marvel could call up anyone in Europe or anyone in South America and get a deal done because they were Marvel and it was a worldwide brand. They couldn't break into Japan without knowing how the Japanese negotiated. Because I negotiated with the Japanese for 4 years, they brought me in as the international publishing manager. And I was there for about 2 years, helping them break into that market and helping them negotiate a lot of their contracts with their freelancers, because that was a period where there was a huge amount of exclusive contracts flying around because DC and Marvel.
Come on, let me pause you 1 second. Can you move closer to your microphone? I think you're a little. think
Is that better?
continue on. Oh, much better. I was having a little trouble with the sound. So continue
No
on. You're
worries.
talking about the contracts.
Yeah, there was a lot of exclusive. There was a kind of an exclusive contract war between Marvel and DC in that period of the late '90s, early 2000s, where a lot of artists were being snapped up by the big two in the wake of the seven gentlemen leaving to form Image. But when I was in those meetings with artists and writers, I realized that I would give them a contract and I would say, take this contract, show it to your lawyer, let me know what they think about it, and we'll close the deal. But I quickly realized the person sitting across from me almost never had a lawyer. They knew they didn't have a lawyer. I knew they didn't have a lawyer. And we both knew we were going to do a dance where they were going to pretend to read the contract and then sign whatever I gave them. Because at that point, I was Marvel. They were not. So what I did when I left Marvel is I started my own boutique legal practice, primarily just to help people understand what they were signing. So they're not just going into these things blind. In many cases, they didn't have a lot of leverage to get anything changed in the contract or get really meaningful changes in the contract, but at least they knew what they were giving up. But as technology changed and as the industry changed and as the internet kind of opened things up for everybody, people got more and more opportunity to make their own comics, build their own businesses, have their own distribution, things like that. So my business has actually grown to help people do all of those different things. I realized about 2015, 2016, that I was helping people with their legal stuff, but I wasn't actually helping them with all the other things they needed. They needed to understand project management and distribution and marketing and sales and how to actually make sure that you're getting paid for the work you do, or make sure that you're getting what you actually ask for when you're paying somebody. So I wrote that book, The Business of Independent Comic Book Publishing, which actually walks you through the entire process of building a comic book company based on your ideas. Everything from the foundation of why you're starting the company to what happens when you leave your empire in your will to your children is all in this book.
This is the book here. I think people can see it and they can find it on your website here. I'll put it into the chat. What year was this published, Gamal?
This was published in 2020. It was right around the it was published during the pandemic. We started with a Kickstarter because there was no New York Comicon, so there was no way to launch it during New York Comicon. But it is now available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Google Books, and any place that you actually want to buy books. You can get it digitally or you can get it in hardcover. And the book was actually a very big success because there were a lot of books out there that teach you the craft, the art of making comics, whether it's drawing, writing, lettering, coloring, but there were very few books about the entire process of the business side. And so we did very well with the book, but I realized as soon as the book went to the printer that when you publish a book like that, especially about an industry that changes as much as comics does, the book is old. As soon as the book went out the door, the book was old. So what I did to kind of alleviate that issue is I started an organization called the Comics Publishing Institute, which is a educational program. It's membership based, where on a weekly basis, we discuss specific issues related to how you grow your publishing business in comics. We discuss all of the news that comes out of the comic book industry and how that impacts everyone building their own comic book business. So that, and people have started to, I've had it for about a year and a half now, and people have really started to gel into this group. It's actually helped a lot of people build up their business.
This is the group that you invited several members of the comic book school community the last time you were on. You were kind enough to invite us to join. It's funny how different your style of teaching is than the style of teaching that we have here at Comic Book School. And I think that what our students are getting out of it is a different type of perspective, a different teaching style. And what I appreciate is you're upfront, you're honest, you tell people what they're going to pay, what they will get. It's very detailed. I happen to land here on the pricing page because I think it's so hard these days with special offers, $1.99 for 3 months, this, that, and the other thing. Or you get to these different types of solutions and you can't even figure out what you're going to pay until you get it into the shopping cart. What I appreciate is the transparency of the class, the way you teach, your openness to discussion, and then your openness to say, this is what it costs. And I think that this is such a refreshing approach to business.
Well, what I actually realized, you realize several things when you're helping people build a comic book business. There's so many moving parts, and each moving part, everyone who's building what it is that they're trying to build is a lot of times are going in without a lot of information. So people don't necessarily understand how much it's going to cost to, let's say, print their comic when the comic is ready to be printed. So they know it's going to cost something, but they don't know how much. And then they're almost always underestimating. So what I try to do with what I'm providing is I make all the costs clear in the beginning so that if you want to buy the book is $34.99. That's it. If you want me to actually provide legal services for you, unlike other attorneys, I don't charge by the hour, because the issue with charging by the hour is no one knows how many hours a thing is going to take. So if you're charging by the hour, it's always a confusing and sometimes scary prospect to understand what the bill might be. So I don't charge by the hour. I charge a flat fee. If you want me to work for you, it's going to cost this. I'm going to do that. And if it takes longer, don't worry about it. You already paid for it. You can actually go back to making comics, which is what everyone wants to do. Well, not everyone, just the smart people. Everybody wants to make comics.
So Gamal, I have a question here from the audience, a good one from Philip Burnett. He's a productive member of the comic book school community. And Philip asks, what is estate planning like as it pertains to comic book IPs? And IP, you might want to explain what that is, so in case people aren't aware.
IP is short for intellectual property. When you're talking about comics, because there's several different types of intellectual property, but when you're talking about comics, you're primarily talking about the copyrights and the trademarks that are associated with your book. The easiest way to explain this is if you take something like the story of a rich young man who suffers a violent criminal event, but survives and then uses his wealth to get the skills and resources to fight crime outside the law as a vigilante. That is a story. It may not be the most original story.
It's literally the story of my life.
There you go. May not be the most original story there, but it's a story. And that story can get a copyright as soon as you write it down. And like I tell all of the members of CPI, you register the story as a copyright, and that's part of your intellectual property. You can then use that to make a lot of different things, comics, t-shirts, toys, whatever, because the images that you use to sell things, whether it's, let's say for the sake of this argument, it's a bat, because why not? The bat, when you put it on things, you can now use that symbol to sell goods. That is a trademark. So copyrights and trademarks are the key pieces of intellectual property that comic book businesses are built on. Every business, from a person who's just starting out with their first comic to Marvel. If you look at Marvel's 10K, which is their financial statements for being a publicly traded company, their entire value is based on the fact that they own intellectual property. It's not the books, it's not the toys, it's not the video games, it's not even the movies. It's they own the underlying concepts. That's IP. So when you ask, how does estate planning work with as it pertains to comic book IPs, you have to understand what estate planning is. And estate planning, by and large, is wills, trusts, and estates. A will, as most people know, is a document that someone puts together to distribute their assets after they pass away. If you actually own valuable IP, that's generating money, you can transfer the ownership of that IP to someone else when you're gone. You can or do something else called a trust, where you actually create a financial instrument. And several people have access to this trust. And the trust can actually generate money after you are gone. Well, actually, you don't even have to be dead for a trust to generate money. But if the IP has value, that IP goes into the trust. And if the IP is generating money, that money goes into the trust, and it can get distributed by the trustee to whoever is going to benefit from that trust. So intellectual property in this case is an investment. All kinds of investment, just like real estate, just like stocks, just like bonds, can go into wills and trusts and estates, so that people who come after you, who you want to benefit from these things that you put work into, can actually reap the financial rewards.
True or false, Gamal? There's only one way to answer. It's true or false. Should you get a lawyer for your estate planning if you have IP? True or false? Go.
True.
True. That is the correct answer. I just wanted you to know I knew the answer, but I'm glad that you do as well.
Thank you.
Gamal's really, really smart and a good sport. But really, Gamal, the thing that grabbed me was the fact that, hey, we are going to New York Comicon soon, many of us. Many of us will be speaking with publishers. If you have a table, you may be approached by Hollywood, not the entire city, but a person representing the city. Yes. And you were talking about, what was it? Unfair contracts or?
Well, let me give you a little bit of background. What you saw in my newsletter was the condensed version of a rant that I put on Twitter earlier in the week. And that rant came from several events happening at the same time. I was getting ready for Comic-Con, which means I was putting panels together, because a couple of the panels I'm going to be on, we're actually teaching lawyers who are not familiar with the comic book industry how to represent comic book clients. So there's a lot of discussion about what to look for in contracts. And there was several of my clients that I work with privately who came to me with really bad contracts that they had already signed. And I was also putting together a class talking about direct market distribution for the Comics Publishing Institute and how some of those contracts can be bad. So it all kind of came to a head. So I just kind of exploded on Twitter talking about there is no reason in 2022, there's really no reason to accept a bad contract from a publisher. Because unlike when I started in comics, there are structures, there are tools, there are devices, there are all kinds of things like Comic Book School, like my program, like Comics Experience, like all of these other things that can help you actually create your own comic book company. The difference between a person who does not have a publishing company and has a book they want to publish, and a person who has a publishing company is not, it's most of the time, it's not huge amount of investment in money. It's not because these people have, they don't necessarily have MBAs from like MIT. They just started a company and they built a structure to publish comics. You too can build a structure to publish comics. It is not beyond your capability in 2022 in the ways that it was much harder in the 60s, the 70s, when people were distributing out of head shops or the back of their car, and they had to like staple things that they got from the printer. We have prints on demand. We have Amazon. We have software to actually manage your inventory. We have all the things that you need to build a company. So it makes no sense, this was my conjecture, it makes no sense to accept a bad deal from a publisher when no deal is actually better than a bad deal. Because in a bad deal, you could actually create the next Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That could be a book that sells hundreds of thousands of copies a year. And the way the deal is structured, you could get no money.
So, Gamal, Gamal,
Go ahead.
What happens that causes somebody to sign a bad contract? Set up the scenario for me. Are people being asked to sign a contract literally in Artist Alley at Comic-Con? Is there anything like that? What's the scenario?
What usually happens is a long process. A person who decides they want to get into comics comes to a conclusion at a certain point that they want to do the creative part and they want to make money. They don't necessarily want to do the business part, so they want to find another publisher who will take care of all of that stuff. The distribution, the sales, the accounts payable, accounts receivable, the printing. They don't want to do all that. They want to just make comics. So they figure they'll find a publisher. The publisher will pay them. They'll make comics. It'll turn into movies and TV shows. It'll be great. Then they start, submitting. And then they start pitching. And a year will go by, or 2 years, or 5 years, or 7 years. And then they start to think they're never going to get a bite on this story that they've worked on for several years of their life and they are very attached to. And then one day, someone gives them a bite. And they think to themselves, if I do not sign this deal, I'm going to be waiting another 7 years for another publisher, or there won't be another publisher. This is my only shot. So one of two things happens, or one of three things. The first thing, the contract comes, they don't read it because they feel like the contract is a barrier to where they want to go. What they really want is they want to see their comic on the shelf. They want to actually, get the book in their hand. They want to actually see the numbers and they want to see the ad in Diamond. So they just sign it. They don't worry about it. Other people, and this is more and more people since 2016, 2017, will come to someone like me and say, read the contract for me and tell me what it says. And I'll tell them what it says. And in most cases, I want to say 60 to 70% of the cases, the contract is horrible. It is what I refer to as egregious. It is what I like to think of, okay, you might as well never publish this comic if this is the deal you're going to take. And in many cases, my clients sign that deal because of the psychological concepts we talked about in the beginning. Or they will take the notes that I gave them that says the contract is horrible, and then they won't sign the deal, and then they'll go off and live happily ever after because one of two things will happen there. Either A, they will publish the comic themselves and know that they're in control of publishing the comic. So if any money comes out, that's your money. But the responsibility of getting the book out the door is also yours. The other possible outcome is they find a publisher with a better deal and they get a better deal. So the reason the short answer is the reason people sign the contract, the bad contract, is because they either don't read it or they do read it and they're afraid of not getting the deal.
Is it here? I'm gonna put one to you now, Gamal, because I think this is probably one that you've encountered many, many times. A question from Philip Burnett: are there any protections for a creator who signs a contract without consulting an attorney first, or are they just hosed? And now I don't know if that's a technical term, hosed, if they hit them with a garden hose, or if
hose it's an adjective.
It's an adjective.
Most of the time, people use more adult expletives when they call me on the phone. But, we're not going to use them.
But we love Philip. Philip's he's a super kind guy. So Philip, who may or may not have signed a contract, asks if you have signed a contract already, and then they come to you.
Well, what we do when you've already signed the contract and then you come to me, I will do a paragraph by paragraph deconstruction of the contract, which will actually explain to you three key elements of the deal. What your rights are in terms of what it is you own or don't own, what it is you can or cannot do, especially if it comes to terminating the contract or doing what's called a clawback, where you pull back your intellectual property rights from the company. Your revenue, which is how much you are theoretically supposed to get paid under this contract, and your responsibilities. What is it that you're supposed to be doing for these people because you signed this deal? Once we actually break down the contract for you so you understand all those elements, then we can figure out how you can get out of the contract. Is there a termination provision? Is there a performance provision that they didn't do that could help us, get out of the deal? There are several concepts and options in the law when it comes to contracts that a person can get out of the contract, but sometimes the contract is written in such a way that I have to tell my client, this particular intellectual property, you have to let that go because you signed it away. Now, that means, then normally if that happens, we're not just talking about that particular story, because a lot of publishers are they're in what I refer to as the maybe movie business, which means most of their business model is predicated on the idea that sooner or later someone's going to give them a movie deal. The comics themselves will run at a loss and they will not make money on the books, but when Netflix calls, in theory, they're going to give them enough money to cover all the losses that they've had over the years. This is not the best business model in the world that I've ever heard, but this is a model that is out there for publishers, which means they don't just want your story. They want control of the underlying intellectual property. They want control over the sequels, the prequels, the spin-offs, the actual characters of the story, everything in the story. That's what publishers want. So, and this is what I see time and time again. Someone comes to me and says, a publisher is going to give me a publishing deal. But then when you read the contract, it's not a publishing deal. It is basically a transfer of intellectual property rights, normally for little or no money.
I want you to repeat that again, because I think that say it slowly. It's not a publishing deal, because this is huge. I'm going to go, hold on. I'm putting you full screen. I want to make sure that's, there you go. You're big now. Go. This is huge.
The fact that a document on the top says this is a publishing agreement does not make it a publishing agreement. A publishing agreement gives one party, the publisher, the rights to publish the comic. A lot of the contracts that I'm seeing, when it comes to these kind of deals, and this is usually in the creator-owned space, it is not a publishing deal. It is a transfer of intellectual property rights, which means the company is actually attempting to take all of the rights that you have developed in this story, all the characters, all the events, everything. And they're going to give you in return pretty much nothing, because, like we said before, if you're hungry for a deal, if you think you can't get a better deal, if you think you can't publish your own comics, you will take a bad deal. What I'm trying to tell people is you don't have to take a bad deal. You could actually go through life with no deal and be better off. I have clients who they've built successful businesses on crowdfunding and then secondary distribution. I have clients who are actually gotten major deals on webtoons. There's so many different avenues that people can carve out and build a business in comics that have nothing to do with taking bad deals and then realizing you did a bad deal, realizing you lost your intellectual property. And then if you even have the stomach for it, and a lot of people don't, once they get these bad deals, to get up and to start again, knowing that you shouldn't have signed that deal in the first place. I'm trying to help them skip over that bad part. Don't sign the bad deal in the first place, and now you can make comics and have a good time. Because comics is fun. That's what I'm trying to do. I make comics fun by you don't sign the bad deal, now you have more fun. Right?
So I'm going to just real quick, I'm going to pull up your website. I want people to check out your website. It is, this is important. So this is what you were talking about earlier. You literally write your fees down. This is encouraging. It gives people the ability to, whoops, cut that out, to determine if you are, if they want to work with you, and they're not going to get those hidden fees. You're well known in the industry, but you have to do your own research. But everything about you is all here. I'll put this link inside of the chat. All right, stop sharing. So Gamal, let's get a couple things out of you. Number one, where can they find you online? Or are you most active on social, or is it your newsletter? Where's the best place to get in touch with you?
Well, one of the key marketing things that I realized over the past 10 years is the fact that Gamal Hennessy is a very unique name. So you give people your name and they type it into Google. There's not that many Gamal Hennessys out there, right? So you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Those are the three major ones. My website is called Creative Contract Consulting. It's all one word, all lowercase. And you can use that to set up a free consultation, because a lot of times people want, especially comic book creators, they want to actually talk to someone and explain their situation to someone who actually understands what they're talking about. The thing about lawyers is lawyers are very similar to doctors or other specialists in that they know one particular aspect of the law. So the fact that you may know an attorney who does, I don't know, insurance litigation or, medical malpractice or something like that, when you give them a comic book contract, they're not going to be able to help you, because as an industry, comic books are weird. Even if you pull back and you just look broader entertainment law is weird. So you need someone who actually understands what's going on. You set up a free consultation with me. I will tell you what you do need, what you don't need, how we can help you out. The fees are flat and they're upfront, so you know what you're getting into. And that's one piece of it. The other piece is, if you are still building your business, you're not really sure what you need legally, you can go to the Comics Publishing Institute, and we have like 30 different classes on different aspects of the business, from distribution to attending conventions, to managing your IP, to managing your projects to actually get the book out the door. There's 30 classes. We've talked to over a dozen different experts in various fields within comics to get their perspective. You can join the Comics Publishing Institute, and we can help you out there as well. So there's a lot of places to find me. But again, you just type in Gamal Hennessy, you'll find me. There's nobody else you can find.
And similarly, Gamal, I should note, Buddy Scalera only comes up with one result.
See, nobody wants to be Tom Jones in that situation.
No. Gamal, I'm going to have you stick around for next couple of minutes. I want to just show Comic Book School is going to be active at the New York Comicon. And you can see it's a little small here. Let me see if I can make it bigger somehow. Okay, there you are. On the comicbookschool.com website, it's probably not readable by the person, but you can see we have a panel on Thursday, page 1, panel 1. Now, I'm told from New York Comic Con that there may be a time change in this particular one. I actually put a disclaimer down here at the bottom with an update. Today, I updated it. I've been told that we should have that time locked in. It's still supposed to be Thursday, and all of the creators. Gamal, I'm sure you know all of these creators. Creator Connection, facilitated professional networking. This is the one that in the beginning Ari mentioned that he met Marika at, and many of the creators that are going met at Creator Connection, and then were published in our anthology, the award-winning anthology. And then on Sunday, this is not on the website yet, so I'm trying to get them to confirm this, but we're supposed to have editors on portfolios, pitching, and professionalism. This one is all about how to present yourself, what's expected to be seen inside your portfolio, So we have Lisa Hawkins, who she was my editor at Marvel for a little while. Valiant, Joe Illidge, who is he publisher? No, he's executive editor, right? At
executive editor. Yeah.
Executive editor. Was at DC. Darren, also one of my editors at Marvel, and Nelson DeCastro, a longtime Marvel artist and a teacher at School of Visual Arts. But I do want to note to people, there may be changes in the panels and the times. This is somewhat out of our control at this point. We've asked them to give us an update. I haven't yet sent out my newsletter to advise people, but a good best practice would be go to the website and check it out. Where will you be at New York Comicon? What panels are you participating in, Gamal?
Let me see. Hold on. I'll get you the schedule. On Thursday at about 10:30, I'm going to be on a panel called Hero at Law. And that is a panel specifically about, like I said, teaching attorneys, licensed attorneys, how to represent comic book clients. That is not necessary. I don't think that's not going to be open to the public because you have to pay extra to get that ticket. And that panel is going to be 3 hours long. So you probably don't want to go to that panel anyway. You just want to see.
What's with lawyers getting up so early in the morning?
Well, here's the thing. This is a theory. This is not proven. But I believe there's a lot of lawyers who want to go to Comic-Con. So what they do is they say, okay, I'm going to go to this professional development thing. And then I get a professional pass. I can roam around. I can work the show floor. I can buy stuff. But I got to get this professional development thing out of the way first. So they make it really early on the first day. So everybody gets it out of the way. And then they go do what it is that they're going to do.
That sounds like a conspiracy theory, but a really good idea.
It's just a thing because it's always I've done it 4 years in a row. It's always at the same time. It's always the same length, and that's just my theory.
All right,
that's going to be.
Where else will you be? Thursday, you got the lawyer one.
From 10:30 to 2. At 2:30, I'm going to be moderating the panel on Kickstarter trends for 2022, and then on Friday, I'm going to have a panel on comic books, the comic books to movie timeline, to explain to people exactly what happens legally when your comic gets picked up to be made into a movie, what it is that you get, what it is that you do not get, what it is that you can expect in terms of getting paid and all that kind of stuff. And then Sunday, I'm going to be at another panel for drafting comic book contracts, which is also going to be 3 hours long, which I think is also only for attorneys.
Well, it would have been easier if I just said, are there any panels that you're not on?
I will not be on the copyright for comics panel, only because I had other things that I had to do and I couldn't be on that panel.
All right, if people want to attend your panels, what's the best way to find the list? Is it going to be on your website? Where will they find it?
It will be, I'm going to post it I'll post it on social media, and it will also be on my newsletter. But the panels so far that I'm going to be on are, at this point, the last time I checked, they were on the New York Comicon website, but I will have a list that I will post everywhere so that people know where the panels are.
That's fantastic. And obviously, look, I just think what you're doing is terrific, Gamal. I think it's super important. As somebody who has signed some inadvisable contracts, I can tell you that it is regrettable, and sometimes you do have to just walk away. So, at the end of the day, it's probably better to reach out to somebody and get it. That was my past calling me, telling me that I shouldn't have signed that contract. That was past me telling me that. Anyway, listen, thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you in person. It is always great to see you teach your class. This is not a paid endorsement. This is literally me just saying Gamal's classes are really good. I enjoy his work. And I hope you take a look at what he's doing at the Comics Publishing Institute.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the endorsement.
Yeah. So Gamal, wait backstage. As always, there's Twizzlers, but also today we have cream puffs, which I baked freshly with my own hands.
Very good. I
All right.
appreciate that. And I'm
So
hungry.
don't
So
go away. I'm gonna talk to the audience. So that's it. So I mean, straight up, just don't sign bad contracts. But how will you know if it's a bad contract? How do you know you're not getting a great contract or something that is decent, right? Like you can be like, mom would be like, oh, that's a good contract. That's pretty fair. You wouldn't unless you had somebody who knew how to read that. If you've ever read these contracts, and I've skimmed through them, but I signed them anyway. If you've ever skimmed through them, you realize you're in over your head. You might be good at dialogue and panel by panel breakdown. It's unlikely that you have a true understanding of what these sentences mean. And really, he lays down a rate. I think it's like $500. And you just have to decide what that means to you. Now, I will always say, and I say this to you all the time, self-publishing is painful. And with self-publishing, you just have to decide how much pain you're willing to endure. And usually that pain comes in the form of money, but it can also come in the form of regret. When I think about how much money I've spent on putting my comic books out there, it's always been painful. I can sometimes trace a line from the comic that I've published to something else that it led to, and I'm happy that I spent the money. There are other times where I've spent the money and it didn't lead to anything, and now it's just pain. I have on occasion done freelance. You guys know I'm a web designer. I've done comic book writing that got paid. I have consulted in marketing. I've done all kinds of things. I've even sold my own comic book collection. Now, let's face it, it's a little painful, but that is the money that I'm willing to spend. So what I would recommend to you is carve out a certain amount of money that will dictate how many pages and issues you can put together. And then if you are soliciting a publisher and looking for somebody to do those business elements that Gamal was talking about, you may want to consider working with a lawyer. Looks like comments are still coming in. You may want to, legalese is another language for sure. It is. It's a totally different language, and people are trained and pass a bar exam to be able to do it professionally. So I hope this was useful to you, particularly as you're walking around at New York Comicon. Now, I'd like to remind you of a couple things. Go back to the website. Comic Book School has 3 panels so far. Those times might change. We're still doing Creator Connections. That one's actually on the website, so we know that is locked in. Also, take a look at the publisher submission guidelines before you go to the show. Look at the publishers that will be there. See what they're publishing. Go to our website at comicbookschool.com. Look at their submission guidelines. And they might even have on their website, like, we are not taking submissions at Comic-Con, submit them before. These are important things. So preparation is actually really important for you. And I want to see you be very successful. And I want you to be able to fulfill those dreams of publishing, whatever that means, but also not to live the regret that, quite frankly, I have, because I've signed some bad contracts. Okay. And it's sad, but it's true. And I've had to walk away from some properties. Anyway, thank you so much for joining. I look forward to seeing as many of you as possible at New York Comic Con, and keep making comics.